Hello everyone, welcome along to the channel once again, and welcome to another episode of Educating Peter, where I am each time joined by a guest from the community to teach me all about something that I don't know, an area of technology that is not within my focus, but which I want to become more familiar with, and hopefully so will you. And on that note, I have a wonderful guest joining me for this episode, and it's Keith Atherton. Hey Keith, how are you? Welcome.
Hi, Peter. Very good, thanks. Good to see you. How's things?
Amazing, really good. Just before we started recording, we were just saying the weather in the UK, which is where we're both based, is typical for this time of year, but we're used to it, and we've got Christmas to look forward to, so things can't be so bad.
Exactly, yeah. Not long to go. All good.
Exactly. So, Keith, before we sort of dive in and talk all things Power Platform, which is your area of expertise, would you mind just introducing yourself to the viewers and tell them a little bit about who you are and what you do and how you got to where you are?
Yeah, sure thing. So my name's Keith Atherton. I'm a software architect and developer. Been doing this for over 20 years now. I'm based in Scotland, so I work for a Microsoft partner consultancy. And yeah, over the years, I've used various parts of Microsoft tech stacks, lots of .NET, SQL Server, and on-prem for many years. But really, in the last few years, I've really focused a lot more on cloud. So mostly Power Platform, some Azure as well, and some .NET still. That's really, one of the core skills for me, which can be used with a Power Platform to extend things in a code-first way, if you want as well. But yeah, really, the last few years, I've been doubling down on the Power Platform, mostly with PowerApps, lucky enough to become a business applications MVP, a PowerApps super user, and I'm a LinkedIn learning instructor as well. So yeah, all good fun.
Lots going on then. Perhaps I know the feeling. And so Power Platform, it's massive, isn't it? It's everywhere, and it's got great traction over the last few years, and will continue to do so. And you're going to tell us all about it in this episode of Educating Peter, and maybe give us a little bit of show and tell as well. So if you wouldn't mind, I'll hand over to you, and you can share with us a bit about Power Platform.
Fantastic. Yeah, I can go ahead and share the screen as well if that works.
There we are.
Great.
All good.
Awesome. Thanks, Peter. So yeah, just a bit of background as well on the Power Platform, just from an overview, if you will. So I always see Power Platform, that term, as like the platform itself. So a bit like with Azure being the cloud platform, all the services within it, they're specific, whether it's storage, compute, many other things. The Power Platform's kind of a similar thing. I see that as the big umbrella term for the platform itself. But if we go further down, there's really 5 main services that are used for it that we can see on this page. So this is Microsoft's official marketing page for Power Platform. And just to give a very, very high, quick overview of what they are, the main ones we've got are Power BI. So we can see the screenshots we've got on the right-hand side. We've got things like reports that contain these visuals, different dashboards. There's AI built into this as well, so you can ask questions of the data within a dashboard. What was the biggest sale last year? What's been the average over the last 5 years? Things like that. There's also, I should say, AI throughout many parts of the Power Platform. Seems to be the way we're going with Copilot everywhere, and AI, really big hot topic. So this is, shortchanging it a bit, but I would say reports and dashboards is the key part of Power BI. It's all your analytics, it's understanding your data, and knowing what to do with that. The next part, for me being a developer, this has been the natural fit for me, which is PowerApps. And PowerApps, as it sounds, is a way you can quickly build apps using this in-browser editor. And these are really focused to be web apps that are internal facing. So they're for users in the organization who can log in and get access to the apps, not truly a public-facing website, more of an internal app. And you'll see common things like forms, grids, these kind of things. You can build code behind them to do more and more. And that's what we'll look at a bit more later on if we've got time as well.
Yeah.
I think the focus with the Power Platform in general, and it mentions here about solving business challenges, and we'll see mention of things like efficiency and automation. A big part of it is really, well, if people are currently using pen and paper, or they're using Excel and things are manual and the repeating steps, this is where using a lot of these Power Platform tools can speed things up by making things repeatable a lot more easy, or you can run things on schedules. Or again, you can offer an app like this instead of someone writing it on a pad, going to a desk, entering it into Excel, or whatever the case may be. This is a web app they can use on a phone or a tablet on the move. It can be portable, or it can be used at the desk, and it can, validate the inputs that they put into it, or it can call something called a cloud flow that then actually sends an email or does other work as well. So a lot of these different services can be combined together to make them much more powerful than just by themselves. Next up is Power Pages. This really is public-facing websites. There's a really good designer in this where you can just drag and drop. You can set the colors and the branding, but also within the sites, you can set up account management areas, just as if you was going to an e-commerce site and you wanted to see your orders and your profile. You can set up quite easily in the configuration for these Power Pages. So yeah, there's a lot more power than just the cosmetics, just the look and feel. They can actually go in. So if you're working with vendors or third-party suppliers or someone else, they need their own access into here, or using different ways they could connect. You could use Azure B2B and other ways that they could actually get the auth to get into that. Then you can actually provide this public-facing website, this portal where they can manage things themselves. So next up is Power Automate, and this is one of the main parts that I use as well. Really, Power Apps and Power Automate are probably the top two that I use the most. And again, many parts of these can work together or standalone. So the Power Automate is really where you can build up, seeing this graphical designer, if you will. Again, lots of drag and drop. You can actually automate tasks or make things go through approval processes, and lots of other options available as well. So this one, it's actually a bit small on the screen, but this is, I can tell from the icons that some things happened in SharePoint that might trigger this flow. Let's say a new item's been added to a SharePoint list, for example. This can then go to Office 365 to get my profile. From there, it'll get my name, my email, my line manager. It can get all these other properties about my profile. Then it's doing some work here. Looks like an approval flow, and you can have decisions, the conditional branching logic here. If it's a yes, do this, and no, do that. You can have loops and build this up quite complex. Those of us who've used Azure Logic Apps as well, this UI would look very, very familiar. This runs in the browser, and the one with the Power Automate, this designer is actually based on the Logic Apps designer, which is why they're so similar. And the very last one is Power Virtual Agents, which is a fancy term for chatbots. So this is a way you can actually use the designer again. So this is accessible for people who are not technical or have minimal technical skills. Sometimes they call them setters and developers, or setters and makers. And this is a way that if you're someone with this business domain knowledge, let's say you work at an airline and you know how it works, the ticketing, passenger lists and everything like this. But me as a developer, if I've not seen it, who's going to be the best person to build an app or a system on this? The person with that knowledge. So a lot of these tools, including this one, is a way you can drag and drop and author this. If the user says yes or no, we take them to this route, or provide the menu options A, B, and C, or 1, 2, 3. They can pick the options and we take them down that specific path to offer the information that we need. So they want to know the opening hours for my store, or where they can go online to send an email to give feedback. This can be a good place to direct them to that place. So bit of a whistle-stop tour, but they're the top 5 main services. So hopefully that makes sense, Peter.
It does, yeah. It's nice to see them, everything under the Power Platform broken down into these categories. And I've dabbled a little bit in my time with Power Automate, and that's about as far as I have gone with anything relating to Power Platform. I've obviously looked at Power BI dashboards, but I wouldn't know how to get them there and that sort of thing. But that's about the limit of my knowledge of it. Power Automate, I think, has gone, and many of these, I guess, but Power Automate's gone through a bit of a journey with naming. I think it was Microsoft Flow beforehand, wasn't it? And then maybe before that, was it SharePoint Workflows? Or is that still a thing on its own, or is it all Power Automate now?
Yeah, I do remember the Microsoft Flow. Actually, the SharePoint ones, I'm not too sure, but yeah, as you say, Microsoft Flow became this, and I think PowerApps was, a bit later on, and then they kind of got brought under the same platform as well. But even with things like Power BI, that might go the way of being part of the Fabric stack now. That might be getting a change or rename or being part of something else with all the analytics and everything you get to. So it's in constant flux for sure.
Yeah. And do you think Power Automate is sort of robust enough for some of the more bespoke configurations, if you like? Reason I ask, an example, I used to work for a bespoke Microsoft partner a few years ago who specialized in workflow technologies, and they explicitly partnered with Nintex for workflows. Has Microsoft got sort of closer in the game to that more specialized sort of automation, or is there still a case, do you think, for that more third-party offering?
Yeah, that's a great question, because I think certainly Power Automate, and I've got the portal open right here, is, as you say, it's really evolved and it's really grown since when I first started using it. One of the great things with Power Automate as well as PowerApps is that they use what we call connectors to connect to other systems. Now, many of them might be like in the screenshot example, we could see it go to Office 365. We could see it go to OneDrive for Business, many other places as well, but also non-Microsoft systems as well. So it might go to Google or to Twitter, or X as it's now called. And these connectors keep being added to all the time. So when I started working with Power Automate and Power Apps, I think there was maybe around 300 connectors, but there's now over 1,000. They keep growing. So it can be Microsoft's core ones. There can be other companies, or ISVs have created their own as well, or just independent publishers. You can actually create your connector, which is really just a wrapper around an API. And then if you do want to make them part of the offering for the public, you can get them certified by Microsoft, and then they're available for everyone. And connectors are typically either standard, so they fall under certain licensing, or premium, and they need some extra licensing to use them as well. But now back to your question, it's a good one, because I think the more it's grown, the designer recently changed for Power Automate. There's a lot more connectors available. It's very powerful. I've found it very robust when I've used it, whether called from a Power App or called separately. But I think there are good cases for still using other, other tools that help with automation. As you mentioned there, there are some other ones where they maybe have a bit more of a niche offering, or have a strength that maybe Power Automate doesn't yet cover. Again, this would integrate very well with the rest of the Power Platform and mostly Microsoft tools, as well as many others. But there was some things I was looking at recently. It wasn't quite Power Automate, but it was a workflow process. And I found that it was good for some. This other thing was called a business process flow, and it's part of PowerApps. It's good for some linear and some basic workflows, but if you wanted nesting and recursion and things that get quite gnarly and quite complex, there maybe are other tools on the market that might fit that need a bit better. So yeah, you're absolutely right. It pays to know what's out there, what's available.
Oh, amazing. So what we're looking at here, is this the Power Automate Admin Center, or is this a user experience we're seeing here?
Yeah, this is like the maker experience, if you will. So I've gone in, I've logged in right here. So I've got my own environments, which PowerApps is the same concept of these different environments. So you can separate with a dev, test, prod, or if you've got something, your ALM is a bit more, advanced than that. You can create these environments. The one thing we've got in this Power Automate portal, so we've got links to some, learning materials. As I mentioned before, you've got Copilot here, where you can actually free type to build the flow, and it will just actually build it for you, which is great. So you don't need to completely manually author, and it's actually really powerful. So let's have a look. So some of the suggested, okay, let's go for this first one. Every day, copy a file from one SharePoint site to another. We'll go ahead there. It will work away. And quick as a flash, it's come back with what flows need. By the way, these cloud flows, they always need one trigger, which in this case is a recurrence, so a schedule, or it could be instant, like you click a button, or it could be event driven. So let's say a SharePoint list items created, or a rows added to a SQL Server table, whatever the case may be. Many of these triggers are available that you can then, build off that event using a trigger. And then you would need at least one action, and you could have multiple if you've got a complex workflow. So in this case, there's one recurrence. Then it goes to SharePoint to get the file content using the path, and then create a file. And when you're in here, you can actually choose, well, what SharePoint site are we looking at? What the recurrence is it 7 a.m. every day? Is it once a week? Whatever that case may be. But to get up and running, certainly if you're new to Power Automate, we could see how fast that was. Really, really powerful.
Yeah, it's really good. So it really does give the opportunity to start small and build and get a feel for it and crawl and walk and run.
Exactly. Yeah, it's a good way of putting it, because when I saw these portals for the first time, it's quite new. It was new. It was quite overwhelming. I got up here, I'm like, wow, there's so many options and icons. What is going on? But the fact that these Copilots built in, again, whether you're technical or not, it can get you started. Even if it gets you 90% there, then you need to add connections and auth to connect to these services. You're kind of up and running, and you can always tweak it and adjust or build on it. So as I mentioned before, with flows, you've got these several types, like the automated, instant, scheduled. There are some other options as well, some really cool features like process mining. You can actually get logs for different processes and see if you can make it more efficient or where there's bottlenecks. Really, really powerful stuff. Another thing to get up and running quite quick as well is if we scroll down here, we've got these templates, like a starter for 10. So these are like, pre-built templates for flows, like follow up on a message, schedule a reply. And if I go to all templates, we can actually see there's a ton, and they keep being added to, which is great. So let's see this one here. Save Outlook.com email attachments to your OneDrive. So presumably the trigger is Outlook.com email comes in. Then the action is go to OneDrive, save it in a folder, job done. So let's actually just click on that real quick. That's what it will do.
That's brilliant, isn't it? Because email, as somebody who was an Exchange person in a previous life, people do tend to use inboxes as storage folders, and they really shouldn't. So this is going to get around that and put documents and spreadsheets where they really should be.
Exactly. That's a good point. Yeah, you could even help with the compliance or following a good practice, or, even giving it in the hands of the users if they want to develop them further. But then there's also, bearing in mind of making sure they don't access, say, live data or live databases. You can lock things down if you need to. But if these are provided to users and they know their processes, they want to make it more efficient, they can have the power to do that. So this is really Power Automate, the main portal that you go into. I think we looked at using the Copilot, Copilot just there, as well as templates, or just you can manually create from scratch as well. And again, very similar to Azure Logic Apps. And there's a really good section on Microsoft Learn about how to compare them, whether it's costing, licensing, the capabilities, which you would choose to use between the two, because they're very, very similar offerings from both of them.
Wonderful stuff. So how about PowerApps then? Because that's something we can take a quick look at.
Yeah, absolutely. So we go to PowerApps right here. This is the portal for PowerApps. Kind of a similar interface. We're going to get this hero image. We get some commonly used things in the center with a menu bar down the left. And again, a bit like the Azure portal and many of the cloud-based services, many of the Power Platform tools are browser-based. So this is where you actually build the apps and do the editing. You could even see data within this portal as well. Really, I find that most of the Power Platform is just going in the browser. Any of the common browsers, you can actually run these tools. So with the PowerApps, again, a similar look and feel. You can get to settings. You can see environments just here. If I go to this US environment, just like the Power Automate, there is a Copilot here. The reason I've done that is some of these Copilot and AI features, some of them are US only, or were when I created these environments. Some are still preview, some are GA, and they're ready to use. Just so happens this PowerApps Copilot, which a bit like the Power Automate, you can say, I want to build an app to do this, would actually spin you up the skeleton of that app. It will give you the bare bones of it, and you can build on it from there. Very, very powerful. In fact, let's try that just now, actually. Let's try manage inspections. One of the suggestions, give this a run. There's a few cool things with this one, actually, which is maybe worth showing, is that if I remember correctly, this first one would give you a suggested schema for the main table, but also populate some dummy data so you can start playing with it straight away.
Excellent.
And then on the sidebar, you've also got the Copilot where you could say, add column for, I don't know, quantity. I'm making this up, but let's see, will it add this quantity column? I should go away. If I've explained it well, it will actually go ahead, add the column, and again, fill with dummy data. So I've got something to play with it as quick as that.
Wow.
I want to remove a column, change a column, off I go, keep making the tweaks. And then when I'm ready, I can click on the create app. This might take slightly longer, but this then builds up the screens of the forms and the grids of all the data, and we can change it. So again, if you're new to PowerApps, you say, I just want something up and running, just want to play with something right now. This could be a matter of minutes and you've got something ready to go.
Wow, we're really getting into sort of almost Star Trek-like technology with this, because I remember I'm a big Trekkie. A lot of people know that. And one series, Deep Space Nine, in the 90s, there was a science officer called Jadzia Dax, and in the first episode of that series, she said to the computer, because they just talk to their computers and they answer back, which is pretty much what this is the beginnings of. And, computer, create me a database for this, 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 and that, and pull from these sources. So we're really getting into those territories, aren't we, with this sort of technology?
Yeah, we really are. We should maybe hook up that speech to text and just wire it all together, I think.
Yeah, I think it'll come for sure. And as we record this, Keith, we're actually on the day of 14th of November, which is Ignite Day. So Ignite keynote coming up later on today. So I imagine we'll be seeing lots more Copilot content coming out. And I think there'll be some Power Platform content coming out as well, because it really is huge. And we know between us a lot of really great people within our community who are doing this. And I think it's a great area for young folks looking to start their career in tech to get into, for sure.
Yeah, I totally agree. I see lots of investments with the low code suite, this Power Platform, sometimes referred to as low code or no code tools. And maybe with no code, as you say, whether you're new or you're young or you're new to tech, and there's many good case studies of people career switching into using the Power Platform who previously were an accountant, or again that domain knowledge, or a business expert, and really did a lot with, I don't know, Excel spreadsheets, or needed to automate a process, and then became a full-time Power Platform developer. Because it's so quick and easy, relatively, to get up and running. Certainly with these UIs where you just drag and drop, and then either you learn the code, or you go on that learning path, or you see your local friendly code monkey and ask them if they can add the code behind to actually do the moving parts and save data and retrieve data and things like that. So yeah, even to get up and running, to fully build or 80% build an app, you really don't need a lot of coding knowledge or much at all, to be honest.
And that is sort of music to my ears, because I've never been a coder, and there's absolutely still a place for that, without a doubt. That is still there. But if I were to get into this area, if I was to suddenly think, oh, I fancy a change from security, this is where I'd be looking. And I know, as you say, plenty of people who've made that switch, and you can do that. That's the beauty of this whole Microsoft platform, is that you can sort of pivot, and I've done that. I mean, I've gone from being an Exchange guy to a SharePoint and Teams collaboration sort of guy, and I've sort of organically ended up in security and compliance. So that is the great thing about this platform. There's opportunities for you to change and grow.
Yeah, that's a good point. And there's so many transferable skills. Again, maybe, .NET and SQL Server were my core skills for years. And then when I go to PowerApps, I mean, so this is the app that it's created. By the way, we can see this is a little small here. Actually, let me move this across. So, even for me, when I went to this, this is up and running. I've got something to play with. I might tweak the UI, I might change things, or use the sidebar to help me make those changes. I can keep taking it further if I want to. But yeah, I must admit, when I was new to this and I was looking at some of the code, let's see if I go to this edit button and expand this formula bar. This FX, almost like a bit like Excel with the formula bar. This is where it is center top. And then when you go here, and I could see what the code was, getting at, and then I learned what these functions meant, what the syntax, which if we boil this down, let's try this. Let's expand this a bit more. That's really JSON. This is building records in a JSON type structure and building things with the records and then the data that goes in. And then again, I had to learn what this meant. But my first thought as I don't know if pro code is the right approach, the right phrase, but someone who say you use .NET and OO languages for years, I did think, if this is really just Excel formulas and that's the extent, would I get a bit limited or boxed in? So even though the skills were transferable of knowing about calls to update data, insert records, I'm like, well, am I going to get hit ceilings? Am I going to get stuck and not be able to do interfaces or inheritance and all the fancy gubbins with OO languages? But I have to say, really, so far for standard business apps, I've not actually hit that ceiling. There's also ways you can use C# and other pro-code languages to extend the Power Platform too. So I could write my own separate plugins using .NET, using C#, and actually call them as well as part of the Power Platform. So even if this editor doesn't have everything I need, there are still options.
Oh, wonderful. I do have one very specific question on PowerApps, more from an admin point of view, which you hope you may or may not be able to answer. I know from sort of looking in the PowerApps admin center previously that there is a feature in there for data loss prevention, or DLP specifically. And that's always sort of thrown me a bit and confused me as to why that's there and not in the main sort of compliance center, and how they relate to each other. Is that something you can comment on at all? Or?
Yeah, there is actually. Let me see if I can find where the option is just here. So there's retention just there. Yeah, it used to be on the sidebar actually, but it's a really good. You know, I think I need to go to the admin center. I beg your pardon. It's a great question because with DLP, really important subject. And actually, a friend of mine, Craig White, did a really good blog series on DLP with PowerApps, which he's just wrapped up today with his last post. Awesome. We didn't script this, folks, I promise.
But well, we'll happily plug that. If you want to get me the link, I'll share that in the description, and we can get Craig's views. Craig's a great guy.
Oh yeah, appreciate that. Thank you. Yeah, he's done some. It was such an important topic, as you say, from admin and governance. That if you go to the admin center and to policies, you've got data policies and other things available. Now with DLP or data loss prevention, the way that really works. If I jump back to the app a moment here, so. The main editor, we can see this canvas where we're building this. This is a canvas Power App. There's another type called a model-driven app as well. Now, when we're in the canvas app, we've got the formula bar. If we go on the left, we have a data option here. Now, this is hooked up to a Dataverse table, which is auto-created for us and filled with sample data. Now, this is really the place where, when we talk about data for data loss prevention, we can go here to different tables. I can actually choose different data sources and plug them in there. So DLP, there's a lot more to it than this, but one big part of it is these connectors that go to the other services. By the way, the little diamonds just mean they're premium. If there's no diamond, it's included in the standard.
Right.
When we go to this data, there is a risk, as you say, oh, I've got the SQL auth credentials. I can go to a live database, pull that data, but I might also be able to wipe or change that data as well. There's big risks. So a lot of the focus on the DLP is being able to lock down these connectors. You might block them for certain users. You might whitelist only certain connectors in certain environments. You might have a safe play development environment, which is, let's say, what we're in now. Okay, we just want to open up certain connectors. They can see some things read only. They can only play with them. The production one, they lock down maybe using service principals or service accounts. Only that account has the permissions to be able to change data in that SQL server or whichever environment it is. So now it's a great question. It's a big topic, but yeah, you can lock things down, but a lot of it is in how we access the data, which is by using these connectors and by tagging them if they're blocked or business use only. There are other options as well.
Cool. Interesting stuff. I mean, I remember an analogy, many people use this one, and it's a little cheesy, but I think it's so true, that when you get Microsoft 365 or an Azure tenant, you've really got a big box of Lego bricks in front of you, haven't you? And you can choose what you need to build, and no organization is going to build the same thing or use all the bricks. You've really got so much potential in what you can do with it. Yeah,
it's a good point, because Azure was what I got started with first before the Power Platform, and I saw it the same. I was like, oh, I've got so many toys to play with.
Yeah,
and they can be integrated with each other, used in different ways. And I wouldn't be building my own AI or bots or copilots, but now I've got them available. There's different SKUs, different price plans, but I can now play with these toys, which before wouldn't even be an option. And then when I went to using the Power Platform, I've heard the same thing used, just as you said, it's almost like Lego bricks, because these can be added together and extended and used together in various different ways. But also you do get important things like you asked about there, like the DLP. Well, the danger is if I can connect to anything, it means I might break things or see things I shouldn't, in a sensitive information. But there are ways we can add these guardrails with governance, setting up compliance. So it is a safe place for people to play with the toys, but not see things they shouldn't, or for them to worry about, oh, what if I wipe out, this important table? We can keep everyone safe for sure.
Amazing. Wonderful stuff, Keith. I've really enjoyed seeing this quick overview of Power Automate and PowerApps. And to start winding things up, because I'm very mindful of your time, and thank you for being so generous with it. But I'd just like to ask you one last question, which is, if people watching this are thinking this is something I can relate to, I want to get into this, or I want to change gears and start a career in this area, what would be your advice to them in terms of first steps and what they need to look at?
Yeah, that's a great question. There's so many ways of getting hands-on and actually seeing the power of this. So there's a few things. You could watch a few YouTube videos, see real life use cases of how these have been used in action. I see getting hands-on and playing with things like this, the Copilot there, one sentence, and within minutes I have an app with tables and data. If you did want to take it to the certification route, which I am a fan of, I find that if I have to study for an exam and know it well enough to pass an exam, I've got a good foundation, and I've not just cherry-picked the bits of knowledge I need. I've actually got this all-rounded knowledge well enough to pass an exam, which gives me a bit more confidence. I don't have glaring gaps or too many gaps, hopefully. And the PL900, which is the Power Platform Fundamentals, can be a really good place to get started. But again, when we go to these portals right here, I go to, let's see, close this one down right here. Same with the Power Automate, we saw the links to the learning, and same with the Power Apps. If you just log into this portal, which again, you may have access if your organization has certain E5, E3, whatever licenses, you might already have access to these tools using standard connectors already, and it's not being used. So if you're going through the organization, go there and check out the learning. Another thing that I'll mention as well is that, let me open this link right here. I believe, if this is still true, all parts of the Power Platform, those 5 different services, all have free 30-day trials at the moment. So you can get hands-on, give them a go, see if it's for you, and if it is, look into premium licenses. And then the very last thing that I would mention is, if you do like it, particularly with PowerApps, there is something called the PowerApps Developer Plan. Now, this is like a free trial, but it doesn't end, it doesn't expire. So the great thing is you get hands-on with PowerApps. If I go down here to what's included, we're going to get PowerApps, Power Automate, and Dataverse, which is the data platform provided by the Power Platform. It's really Azure SQL and a few other things under the bonnet, but it's got an abstracted GUI over the top. Now, when you use this developer plan, you'll get access to all of these, no time limit. The only caveat is you can't use it for production purposes. This is just for, dev and testing, things like that. But hey, you've got an endless trial of using PowerApps. So this would be a top tip, the developer plan.
Amazing tips. Thank you so much indeed, Keith. That is wonderful. So I thank you again very, very much for your valuable time and being so generous with it. Before we wind up, would you just like to share a bit about what you're up to in the community and where people can reach out to and find your content if they'd like to know more?
Yeah, thanks, Peter. So yeah, I'm pretty active. I mentioned, like yourself, having the MVP award, which I'm very grateful for. I'm also one of the members who organised the Scottish Power Platform user group. We look to have get-togethers every month or every other month. Our next one's going to be a virtual one on Tuesday, the 5th of December, and everyone is welcome to join, whether you're new to the Power Platform or you want to learn a bit more. And we've got some great speakers with deep dives there. So I've got that one coming up in December. Just the usual blogs, blog posts that I do, and occasional speaking as well. But if anyone does want to connect, I'm quite active on LinkedIn and Twitter, or X. So feel free to catch me on there.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much, Keith. It's been an absolute pleasure having you as a guest on Educating Peter. And I've learned a lot, which is the whole point of this. And hopefully those of you watching will have learned something too. So we'll wind up the video, and thank you all for watching as usual. I appreciate your likes, shares, and subscribes, and your comments. It all goes so far for me into growing my channel and reaching a wider audience. And I'm really loving this series, and we're going to get much more guests on to educate Peter and you as well on a variety of topics. So let me know what you think in the comments, and reach out and give me your thoughts. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button, please. I appreciate it so much. Okay, we'll wind up. Thanks again to you, Keith. Take care of yourself and enjoy the rest of your day, and we'll see you very soon. Bye-bye.
My pleasure. Thanks. Bye now.